Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 105. So, we are here for the Rise Up and Share Your Soul's Medicine podcast. My name is Lisa Espinosa, and today we're going to talk about such an important topic, which is setting boundaries to serve more. And it's almost like the universe has been preparing me for this podcast because it has been coming up so much for my clients these past 2 weeks. And so I really want to talk about what does it mean from a spiritual perspective to set boundaries? Why is it not only important, why is it essential, but why is it so challenging? Like, why do we have such a hard time setting boundaries at times? And why it's actually even more challenging if you are someone that has that, part of your divine mission, your purpose, your prayer, your intention, your longing is to serve others, right? If you are, most of my clients are therapists or other wellness professionals or in the service profession. And, they have so much, they've already shared so many gifts with the world, and they are so good at helping others in whatever unique way they do it. And so when you that's part of your makeup, that's how, because God made you that way, right? The divine source made you that way because you are here to help many. It can get even more muddy, this idea of setting boundaries. So let's begin and start talking about this. So the first thing, was really um, connecting with Mother Mary, actually, Ascended Master Mother Mary. And if this is your first time connecting with me, I connect with spiritual allies from all different paths. And Mother Mary is one of my main guides, but I want to be clear that I'm not talking about her from a religious lens. I'm talking about her just like you would talk about Kuan Yin or Green Tara or other divine beings from different paths as an ascended master, as someone who led a human life and then ascended and is still here to support us in our human journey. And she's truly the one who has mentored me throughout my life, even before I knew that that was what was happening, but definitely in my professional life, to learn to set boundaries. And what she brought to me as I was preparing was this whole image of a rose, right? And I'm wearing, this is actually a Mother Mary pendant, a rose symbolized by a rose. And how the rose, and you might have heard this already, but think of a rose, how beautiful, how precious, what a gift it is, right? Looking at the colors of the roses, the different shapes that a rose can have, and the beautiful scent that is here to bless us. And it has those very sharp thorns, right? The boundaries that the rose needs. Because without those thorns, it would serve its capacity to serve, the rose's capacity to serve humanity by providing beauty, by providing a beautiful scent, and all the other vibrations that it emits, it would be limited because it would be so easily crushed, right? So easily crushed, stomped, grabbed, whatever it is. And it's the same thing for us. So this is first, before we go deep into the setting boundaries, is for you to recognize that it is your responsibility to tend to your energy, to safeguard it, so to speak, not from a rigid, fear-based place, but from love, from this knowing that, oh, if I am here to serve and serve at my highest capacity to help the most people, right? To share my unique gifts with the most impact, to help my clients and students get results in the most efficient, transformative way that really helps them, to create artwork that makes me joyful and also uplifts others, to open a holistic center that serves many, whatever it is, whatever your prayer is, then it is your responsibility to safeguard that energy. Just like if you think of yourself as a rose, like, oh, there has to be thorns to protect your medicine, your gifts. Now, today I'm going to talk about the problem with boundaries when we don't have strong enough boundaries. There could also be times where we set too strong of a boundary, like we have walls around us. I'm going to leave that for a different episode. Okay, but for today, we're going to talk about this idea of like if you were a rose and you're meant to have these beautiful thorns, just like you have that beautiful flower, you have the thorns. And think about the rose. When somebody approaches a rose, and I do this, you know how they say stop and smell the roses or flowers? I literally do that. Like I will walk by a rose and stop and go smell it. And I remember once I was doing this by my house, back when I lived in Chicago, and it was right when school was ending, back in Chicago, and there was this mom walking with her little son. I don't know, maybe he was like 7 or 8. And they were coming towards me. I didn't notice them, but I saw this rose and it was so beautiful. I was like, oh, I'm gonna go, take a breath of this rose. So I went and I took an inhale and I really don't hold back. Like I really just do that. And I looked up and the little boy was looking at me and he had this puzzled look, but really curious, like, what is she doing? What did she just do with that rose? And then I kept walking and I noticed he went back and did the same thing. It's like, he was like, what did she do that made her so happy? Right. So again, you are a rose. And when I approach a rose, I know not to, even if I'm going to be in a place where I buy roses to have in my house. And, now that I live here in Mexico, often, when there's these beautiful flower women or flower men selling roses, they leave the thorns in. They kind of wrap them in newspaper. And so I know how to hold the roses. So I honor the thorn and I honor the bloom. Right. And so that's what we're talking about. That's what Mother Mary is saying. It's like we're like roses in Mother Mary's garden. And if Mother Mary is not a divine being you resonate with, just say in the Divine Mother's garden. And so she's not suggesting that we have these thorns to hurt people, right? It's just because what is a boundary? And I looked up the definition. It says something that points out or shows a dividing line. And so setting boundaries is setting a dividing line, not to cause division, but actually to bring about unity. Right. And so to know, oh, it's my responsibility to set those boundaries so that I can keep blossoming and I could keep sharing my gifts. It's just as on a plane. And I know this is such an overused comparison, but it's just such a good one. When you go on a plane, and I've been on a lot of planes this year, so I've heard this many, many times, it's like, oh, if the whatever emergency happens, the oxygen mask will drop. And it says, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Because when you do that, then you can help anybody else who needs your help, right? If not, in trying to help others, you're just gonna also run out of breath and not be any service to anyone. Same when they talk about, in lifeguard training, and I'm not a lifeguard, but I've heard this story where they say sometimes when you're trying to save someone, if someone is drowning, they are in such panic, they can drown you. And then you wouldn't be able to save anybody else. And so this is the idea with boundaries, is to remove it from this idea that it's a selfish thing. And so I want to now share a little bit about why this is so challenging. So this is the reason. One, like I said earlier, if you literally were put on this earth to help people, and I think everybody has that to an extent, but there are some people who that's literally your purpose. That's your divine mission. That's what brings you the most joy, to share your unique gifts, to help humanity, to bring about a whole new paradigm of unity consciousness, right? And if you're watching this, I believe you're one of those people. So if you have that, that's in your makeup, right? And then you combine that, excuse me, with all of the programming, a lot of it religious, but not just religious, around what it means to be a good person. That in order to be a good person, someone who helps, that means you always put others first. You always say yes to people's requests. You sacrifice. You martyr yourself. Like, so there's your innate desire and your makeup that you're here to help people, and then there's that programming combined. And then if it becomes part of your identity that, oh, that's what, why people like you, love you, why people seek you out, is because you're always available and you always help and you take people's pain away. And then that becomes, starts to become part of your identity, and feeling like, oh, this is why, how I'm loved. I'm loved when I help people. Then that all makes it very challenging, or at least tricky, to set consistent boundaries. And please know that when I say this, I'm saying this to me and to all of us, because I've experienced all of that. And I want to just normalize it. This isn't to shame you. It's like to call it out, like, this is so normal. Of course, it would be challenging to set boundaries, especially as women. Especially as women who, like I said, are drawn to helping people, right? Then it's like this expectation, like, oh, that means you're just, you don't have thorns. You're just there, like just, and you've probably experienced, my clients, like I said earlier, a lot of therapists, wellness professionals who are not new to their career, right? They've been doing it for some time, and they've experienced, just as I've experienced, and you've probably experienced, what it's like to always be available and not have, clear, healthy boundaries. That feeling of like, like overwhelm, that feeling of like, I don't even know where I start and they start, the feeling of like, I feel their pain. I'm just carrying all of their emotion on my shoulders, of this feeling of over responsibility, like I have to, like they depend on me. And even burnout, right? Or even like your physical body finally being like, enough, and then some illness or something happens, right? That forces us to like stop, right? I experienced that. I've shared this many times, but when I used to be a middle school teacher in Chicago, in the Chicago public schools, shout out to public schools everywhere. And I loved that work. It was such noble work to seventh grade, for those of you who are not in the States, is like 13, 14-year-olds, 12, 13, 14. And I love that work. It was absolutely my calling. And it was like a profession that literally was designed to have you just give, 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 give. And I'm not even talking about the children. Like that was the easy part, I thought. I mean, yes, there were challenging students, but that wasn't what at the end of the day had me feeling like, kind of like a shell of myself. It was the institution, right? It was all the expectations. It was the lack of support. It was all that stuff. And so when I left that profession to become an entrepreneur, I didn't call it myself that. I was just like, I'm going to start my own business. I'm going to go into healing. I had no idea exactly the details of it. And, I was so programmed, right? So wired to overwork, right? To give, 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 work, 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 do, 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 do. Like that's what was just running through my body. Even when I was in between, when I didn't know what I was going to do next. And so when I started to, get training and starting to see clients and all of that stuff, at first, I was coming from such a distorted lens of service that I was just available to anyone at any time, anywhere. Now, I do want to acknowledge that when you're first starting your practice, some of that is normal, right? You're building a practice, you want people, you want to get to know people, you want to make connections. So there is a little bit of like, you just put yourself out there and you just say yes to all sorts of opportunities. So that was normal and healthy, and I'm very proud of myself for that. But then it would slip into lack of boundaries, right? Then it was like, I got to a point like 3 years in where I was like, I am working so hard and I'm not making enough money. That was one thing. But more than that, what was worrying me was like, I'm working so hard. There's so many more people I feel I'm supposed to help. but I'm already working so hard. I don't think I can work harder. Like I think harder. Like I don't know that I can handle adding more to my plate. And so I was so puzzled. I was so confused. And I kept asking myself, like, how am I supposed to do that? Like, how am I supposed to help more people if at this level I'm already exhausted? And so that was, and I know I digress, but at some point I got sick. I got pneumonia. And that's a whole other story. But it was my soul's way of like, we need to slow down to speed up. We need to pause you. And this is the only way that it's going to happen. And my soul did this out of love, I know, because I was just like, literally my body would just move on its own, like to like overdo. I had such a warped understanding of what was normal or healthy. And so I had to go through like a lot of extreme to understand, like, wait a minute. I can't, if I burn out, I'm not going to help anyone. But also, I'm also getting the simultaneous message that I'm still meant to help and help a lot of people. So, how does that coexist? And one of the ways is learning to set really, really good, healthy boundaries. And the first step is just knowing you have to do that. So if you're watching this and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, there's this area where or this person or this relationship or this situation where I'm feeling like I need to set boundaries. I'm freaked out about it. I don't know how to do it, but I'm sensing that. That's the first step, because a lot of times there's so many people out there who don't even know that. And I say that with so much compassion because I have totally been there, where you just believe that's just what's normal. That's just what's expected. That's what you do if you're a good person. So first step is just acknowledging, I need to set better. I'm learning to set healthier boundaries. Wow, that's been really challenging for me. And it's really important at this point to have so much compassion for yourself, because it's so easy to have that awareness and then be like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? How could I be so dumb? How could I have let people do this, for so long? And please know, that's just your ego structure. Your soul absolutely has nothing but love and admiration and compassion for you. This is a human condition. It's not just you. And so that's the first step. The next step is to remind yourself that even if you're like, it's very challenging for me, this is so hard. And I have to tell you, right, this is something, I coach my clients for a year and they can renew after that. And many clients do. And yes, the focus is helping them to share their unique gifts with joy, with impact. But that often requires looking at other parts of life, right? And right now, gosh, probably over half of my clients are dealing with like really specific situations where they're being called to set boundaries, like to really keep like setting the boundary and like holding firm to that boundary of like, and just being so tested by their loved ones, right? Who are like, wait, you didn't have that boundary before. I mean, they're not saying those words, but that's what they're saying with their behavior is like, you didn't used to set that boundary. Wait, you were always available before. Wait, you always used to answer your phone. Wait, you used to always come and like listen to me, like vent about all this. Wait, you were always the first one to come and help. You're not doing that anymore. Like, what's wrong? You're selfish, da, 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 all this stuff. So this is like a big thing that's coming up in the collective. So, but even wherever you're at with this, the second thing for you to remember is your soul is masterful at setting boundaries. Like, it's a genius at boundary setting. Like, I really want you to take that in. And I never had really thought about it till I was preparing for this podcast, like in that way. And I was like, why is our soul so good at setting boundaries? And then it was like, oh my gosh, because our soul, your soul knows that everybody else also has a soul. And they have all this divine assistance and divine help. Their soul knows that they are sovereign beings and that they do not need rescuing. That what they need is remembering that they are loved by their soul, that they can rescue themselves. Now, that isn't to say that, of course, I mean, there are times where people are in dire situations and their soul places us on their path to help them, right? During that situation. That's beautiful. I have family in North Carolina right now. Well, I mean, that's where they live. This is where my husband is from. and right where the one of the hurricanes hit really hard. And it was like devastating. And the amount of human help that has come, like neighbors, and then the other organizations that come and kind of land in these places where these events happen, that it's like, oh, well, of course, like that's part of the service we have for humanity. But that's not what I'm talking about here, right? I'm talking about these situations where it is very clear that, in fact, this is how you know. Let me finish the first thought. First thought was your soul has pristine boundaries, is masterful at setting them. So even if right now you're struggling with it, even if it's just in one area, your soul knows how to do that and your soul will teach you. It's a step-by-step process. Your soul has so much compassion for you. The other thing that I want you to know, because sometimes it can feel blurry, especially in the beginning, right? That like, how do I know if I'm supposed to set a boundary here, or this is one of those times where I'm being like asked to just give more? And this is how you know. You know because at the on the other side, if you were meant to set a boundary and you didn't, and again, totally understandable. We all do that. We all have those situations. On the other side, you feel depleted. You feel depleted, or you feel resentful, or you somehow this got you off your path. Again, you weren't able to spend time on your creative projects or on your own self care, or it affected your health or your mental, your mental health, your emotional health. That's how you know a boundary was crossed. That's very different than if you're guided to help someone and it's a ton of work, but you go help them. And yes, at the end of the day, maybe you're tired because you're like, oh my gosh, that was a lot. But you feel really good. But you're like, that was, it's the kind of worthy tired, right? That's like, was totally meant to do that. Right. And I can share, even like back, I haven't done a novena in a long time, but maybe I'll do one. I don't know. We'll see. But I did several like online, like virtual novenas. You can find them on my YouTube channel. It was like 9 consecutive days of like, we would do like a certain mantra prayer, and I would do a little teaching, and then we would meditate together for 9 consecutive days. And some of those were long. I mean, they were like 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Some of them were like longer than an hour, like each one. And I remember like that was one of those things where, my soul was like, do this. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so exhausting, because this was aside from my work already that I was doing. I was already seeing clients, teaching classes. This was like separate. But I knew this wasn't a boundary, it wasn't like weak boundaries that I was like, I'm over giving in a novena at all. It was my soul was saying, this is gonna not only bless them, but bless you. And it was always like every journey leading up to it, I'd have a little bit of anxiety and a little bit of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to get so exhausted. I'm going to get tired, a little bit of kind of that ego chatter. And even during the days, it always would feel great during it. But it's like day 3, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I have like 6 more days to go. Right. And, to kind of hold this container, create this container. But as I kept doing it, what happened, my capacity increased. I had more love, I had more compassion, my heart was more open, I felt more abundant, I had more vitality. And sometimes I had to wait till the end of the 9 days, or sometimes even a little longer. But that's how I knew, oh, that was exactly an expansion I needed to do. As opposed to the one example I might have given this example before, but when I was a teacher and I would be kind of assigned to be in charge of the science fair, and it was a lot of work and it wasn't meaningful. Sorry, everybody. I mean, I love the students and I think science is important, don't get me wrong, but just the structure and there was just a lot of parts of it that were just done for the wrong reasons. And at the end of that, I would feel tired, resentful, closed off, like I never wanted to do that again. I had to like actually kind of recover from it, like so that I could keep going. I don't mean like I was going to die, but just kind of like get enthusiastic again about teaching and science and all of this stuff. So that clearly, that was a big journey for me as a teacher, like to clearly start to set boundaries and be like, that is something I do not want to do. That is all inability to set a boundary, wanting to not make people mad, or all of that stuff. Okay, so first step is recognizing that there's a boundary that needs to be set, or maybe it's just more generally that that's something that you need to bring more into balance. 2, recognizing that your soul can totally help you because your soul is masterful at setting boundaries. And now step number 3 is recognizing that it's only a part of you that is afraid or has a challenging time setting boundaries. It's not all of you, right? And you might have heard me talk about parts work. It's one of the things I help my clients with. And so we all have different parts of us. And it's very helpful to think, oh, there's a part of me that has a really hard time setting this boundary. And it might just be triggered with a specific person. Or maybe it's like your clients, like that's like a big trigger for you, or family, or whatever it is, or your sister or your brother, or whatever it is. And so you want to start to befriend that part. Start to recognize like, oh, there's a part of me that's having a hard time setting a boundary. Right? There's a part of me that when this person asks, what often happens is you might set the boundary, like, okay, I've got to go do this thing. And then the person who doesn't honor that boundary, probably because it's been able to get away with it for all this time, right? This person might push back, or might just give you a look, or might just be like, look hurt, or judge you like you're being selfish. And right away, that brings up so many feelings. That part gets triggered, like, oh, am I being selfish? Am I being a bad person? Oh my gosh, I should say yes. And then you let go of the boundary and you're back in that cycle. And so again, I have so much compassion. Like I've so gone through this, but it is something that not only is healable, you can totally heal this. It's essential, because every place where we're not setting a boundary is an energy leak, is a place where you're hooked into your ego structure rather than your soul. And the message that we send out to the universe when we have weak boundaries or unhealthy boundaries is, I'm not ready for you to send me more clients, more students. I'm still learning this lesson. And guess what the universe sends us then? More lessons, right? More people, more situations where you're being called to set that boundary. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because the universe, God, your soul loves you and is like, yeah, this is something that's super important that you need to heal, and I'm here to help you. And so when you just recognize, okay, it's just a part of me. I wrote a couple of questions because this is a whole long, we can go very deep into it. But remember, in this podcast, I'm sharing kind of like a usable, practical thing for you to do. So 1, you're going to recognize that that there's a boundary that needs to be set, or that you're struggling with it, or that you need help with that. 2, you're going to remind yourself that your soul is amazing at setting boundaries, can help you. And then 3, you're going to recognize, wait, it's just a part of me that's having trouble setting boundaries. And in what I call the befriending stage, you're going to ask that question of like, what are you afraid will happen? It's like you're talking to this part of you. And you can do it in a journal, you can visualize it, but asking, what are you afraid will happen if you set this boundary? And then just listen. And I do recommend you write it down, because that helps the unblending process, meaning like kind of like it, in essence, you setting a boundary with that part. So it might be, I'm afraid they're going to get mad at me. I'm afraid they're going to judge me. I'm afraid they're going to leave me. I'm afraid they're going to go find someone else. One of the biggest pain points for those of us who are in service is, I'm afraid they're going to say I'm selfish. It's like, like literally like heart stab. Right? It's like, and if that was something that you grew up being shamed about, or like, kind of scolded in that way, like, don't be selfish, that's selfish, or whatever, like that could be a really big wound. So you're just going to ask, what is your fear? And often with my clients, if it's an issue in their career, it can often be that, well, I'm afraid if I set a boundary, with my clients, with my students, yeah, they're going to think I'm selfish, or they're going to go find somebody else, or they're going to be so sad, or something really bad's going to happen because they really need me, all of that stuff. But you've got to remember, setting boundaries always comes from a loving place. It comes from knowing, wait, I can serve them the most when I am right. Like, again, going back to the beginning, that beautiful rose with the beautiful thorns, that then I can receive all of those downloads from my soul and share them with my clients, students, loved ones. And so that's the first, well, step number 3 is befriending that part and knowing what are the fears. And you can go a step further and say, when did this start? Right? Like, when did it start that you started having these fears? And you might be shocked. The part might be like, when you were like 5, right? And like, you were little, and you, if you weren't a nice person, then it felt like love was withheld from you. And so you learned that you had to be really nice, and being really nice meant not making people mad. I mean, I had so much of that growing up. It was such a message, like, girls are nice. You have to be nice, not be loud, and not be, not make people uncomfortable or upset, or all of this stuff, right? That I've had to dig myself out of. And so, again, so much compassion. And the thing to do at this point is ask your soul for help. Say, beautiful soul, I found this part of me that is just been stuck in this pattern. I have so much compassion for this part. It just really has this fear. Send this part some love. Help me. And your soul will always answer. And maybe will also guide you to other resources, books, professional support, whatever it is you need to make this happen, to create that transformation for this part. And also for you to know that you can have a part that still struggles with boundaries and have so much compassion for the part and still set a boundary. Like, I still, for sure, my parts can get triggered around that. Definitely. It's not like I never have issues with setting boundaries, but I've done this enough that I can like have compassion for that part, listen to it, and still set the boundary. Like, I might have that part for my whole life. That's kind of like, no, don't set the boundary, don't get them mad. And I can just like send that part love. And then, but I'm so convicted, right? I so understand that in order for me to help more people and be of greatest service, those boundaries are essential, needed, non-negotiable. In fact, imagine if when I first started this work, and then that 3rd year, right, when I got pneumonia and I was feeling like so exhausted and feeling like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can keep going with this. If I had not learned this through my own connection with my soul, through my own work with my coaches, my spiritual coaches, I would have quit. I would have at some point decided, I just can't do this. I can't do this work. And think of everything that wouldn't have happened. I've been doing this for 15 years. All the clients I wouldn't have helped, all the classes I wouldn't have taught, my book that I wouldn't have written, all of the love that I put out in the world, it would have never happened because I didn't set those boundaries. And so you want to have your eye on the long game, right? The infinite game, like that book talks about that it's not just about, yes, we want to be here in the present moment, but also like you're here creating a legacy of love. You're here to be of service to many with impact in a way that where you're really taken care of as well. And that's not a bad thing to say. It's not like being narcissistic or selfish. It's like, oh, if I want to keep going and show up in my highest capacity, then that's part of it. And if we have divine beings like Mother Mary mentoring us in this, then we absolutely know it's like, that's, you know, the divine mother, that feminine aspect of God is like looking at humanity and like with so much love, right? And so much compassion and so much understanding, and is sending help and support in the form of other humans. And I always want to be very mindful in how I say this, because I get very uncomfortable with that language that's often used in spiritual circles around being chosen ones. It just really kind of creeps me out. I understand what they're coming from, but it's so easy to fall into the ego structure when you start to be like, oh, I'm a chosen one. I'm a chosen one that has to go save people. It's problematic for many reasons. But I do want to acknowledge there are some of us who raised our hand, right? It wasn't that God was like, "Ooh, you're special and you're not." It was like there was a call. That's why my first book is called Answering Your Inner Calling. And we answered it. We're like, yes, me. I want to do this because I know how many blessings I will receive. I know that this will expand my soul. I know that this will open my heart, and I have so much compassion for humanity. So yes, send me down to the earth. I will have all these challenging experiences. I will forget I have a soul. I'm going to go through all this stuff, but I want to go down there because I want to be, as one of my teachers says, boots on the ground in the front lines, helping people. And so in that sense, yeah, we chose it, but we chose it and everybody could choose it. Right. And so the divine mother is training us, is polishing us like these beautiful diamonds. And one of the things that the divine mother is saying is like, in order for you to go out there and help the most people, you have to have boundaries. If not, you're going to drown along with them. Right. If not, it's going to be like, oh, now you're in it. You're believing all the illusions and distortions that can be out in the world. And so remind yourself of that. That is what has given me the most courage for this work. And what helps my clients is to know, wait a minute, this isn't coming from a selfish place. Like, oh, I want to set boundaries so that I'm happy and I'm good and I'm okay. It's like, no, it's so that I can like serve a whole bunch of people and be an example of what's possible and help other people who maybe are also healers, but they're like, all they see is burnt out healers. And they're like, I don't want to do that. But they want to see other people that are like, wow, look at her light. Look at her heart. Yes, she still struggles, but she's still showing up. Like, I want to do that. That's what's being asked. So we're going to leave it at that. Well, just to recap, one, just recognizing that there's a healing of boundaries for you is the first step. Like, oh, okay. And that's like a normal thing. Doesn't mean you're bad or weak or anything. Like, this is an initiation I really believe all of us go through. Two, remember that your soul is amazing at setting boundaries and your soul's going to mentor you through this. Three, find the part that is really struggling with setting boundaries and ask that key question. What are you afraid will happen if you set the boundaries? Write it down on a paper and bring that to your soul. And I want to offer as well, as you all know, or maybe not, I've been doing so many lives that I can't remember where I say things, but remember I have that free breakthrough consultation. And in that consultation, I take you through this process where I ask you different questions to really get a snapshot of where you are at in relation to connecting with your soul and sharing your gifts. Like, you want to be here and you're here, right? And then it's like knowing like, okay, well, what's in the way? And so through these like specific questions that I will ask you and listening, to what you say, I will be able to provide like a diagnosis, right? Of like, oh, this is what needs to happen. And this is the solution. This is the simple solution to make that happen. Now, when I say simple, it doesn't necessarily mean easy because our ego can get in the way. And then if we feel we're a good fit, if you want to hear about my coaching program, I will absolutely share that with you. So that's one support. The other thing is Blessed. My 6-week journey is starting October 28th. This is specifically for you. for those of you who are therapists, wellness professionals in the service profession, or even if you're retired, but that's what you did, or that's, that I'm still here to serve, but are like, I want to do that in a way where I don't feel overwhelmed and burnt out, where you feel blessed, right? This journey was born out of Mother Mary, told you, her mantra to me of you are blessed and you are a blessing. And so I'll put the link in the comments and you can read all the details. It's 6 Mondays in a row, but 1 week will be a Wednesday because I'll be out of town. You do get the replays. You can look at all the details of the classes. They're going to include teachings, meditations, energy healing, and it's all for $99. I know I keep saying that because I don't think I'm ever going to sell that for that amount. This is just a very special rate. I usually charge like $475 at least for something like this, but this was what I was guided to do. So if you've been watching me and thinking like, oh, I'd love to take a journey with her, this would be the time. And there is a bonus WhatsApp group. As soon as you join, if you would like, I could add you to this private WhatsApp group. And in that group, it's not like we're all chatting with each other. I'm not interested in that for this. This is like, I am sharing resources. I'm pulling oracle cards. I'm sharing music. I'm doing little like videos for the people in that group to keep you in that state of alignment with your soul, to start warming you up, to build that muscle of knowing, wait, I can serve humanity. I can continue helping and doing it in a way that blesses me. And so if you look at the schedule and you're like, oh, but I can't attend live, do it through the replay. You will still be blessed. I guarantee you that. And I know that because I've seen clients do it and because I do it with my own teachers. There are certain journeys that I can only attend through the replay. And I am like blown away at all of the healing and the growth that I'm experiencing. So don't let that stop you. If you're like, I really want to do it, do it, show up. All right, I'm going to pull some cards. Hello. So I have 3 decks here, and this is the spirit animal deck. I've been really, really connecting with I always do, but I've been feeling them extra. I shared somewhere, I think on Instagram Live today, how I opened my front door today and there was a little grasshopper right there. I was like, oh, and grasshoppers are all about quantum leaps, taking leaps. So I was very, very happy. I also shared that I've been connecting with the owl a lot, owl medicine, and many of my clients as well. And yesterday there was a hummingbird right outside my window during a session with a client. It's like we were talking about something very specific, and I turned and I was like, oh my gosh. And I knew this hummingbird was for her, right? Specifically what she was dealing with. And it was like bringing joy to her thoughts, right? About a deep initiation she was going through. All right, so let's see what spirit animal is helping you with this, with setting those boundaries so that you can serve at your highest level. All right. Raccoon, inventor. Decide on what you really want. You have the ingenuity to claim it. Avoid being the trickster and practice integrity. You have many roles and can juggle them well. I love this. And that first sentence, decide what you really want. That can be one of the most important reasons to set boundaries. I remember having a breakthrough consult with this beautiful woman years ago. And one of the questions I asked is kind of like this pie chart of like, okay, where is all your energy going through to, and how much energy is left for you? And when we were done with that, it was like hardly any attention was on her because she was so busy helping everybody else. I've had this experience with many clients when they come to the consult. And so when I asked her the question, what do you want? She couldn't even like answer it because her energy was pulled in so many directions. So often the first reason to start to claim your space is so that you know, wait, what do I really want? And so decide what you really want. It says, then claim it. Practice integrity. And what does integrity mean? For me, integrity is behaving out of alignment with in alignment with our soul. So we're actually not in integrity when we're in people-pleasing mode, right? Isn't that interesting? That even if we're like, oh, I don't want to get them mad, so I'm going to go ahead and do this for them, that's actually out of integrity. If what we really want to say, actually, I can't do that for you. I've got to I can't do it. That's being in integrity. And then I love this. You have many roles and you can juggle them all. All right. There you go. And then I'm going to pull Wild Woman card. And then we will be done. This was a long one today. Okay. Wait, that was like 10 cards. Let's do Wild Woman. Oh my gosh, she just keeps showing up. It says, hold true to your vision. So this, did I show you this deck? Look at her. Look at that octopus over the crown of her head. That tentacle is like right around her third eye, right over here. And so this octopus is coming to her as support, like hold on to your vision. Decide what you want, right? Decide what you want, and just like Joan of Arc, hold that sword of light. Like that's my vision. And maybe your vision is like, I am here to help so many people and do it in a way where I'm not overworking, or I'm not rescuing, when I'm not overdoing, but I actually create more results and healing and miracles in the world. Look at her, how gorgeous. I think I pulled her once in that private WhatsApp group that I was talking about. This card came up as well. All right. Sending you all so much love. I will see you next week. And remember, blessed 6-week journey. If you want to join and be part of that amazing group, I would love to have you. Oh, and I didn't say, if you look at it and you're like, I think I want to do it, but I still have some questions, I would be happy to set up a free, like a complimentary, like 15-minute chat on Zoom just to answer any lingering questions. All right. Bye, everyone. See ya.